There are 17 elements on the periodic table that you have probably never heard of. You can't spell them, you can't pronounce them, and you definitely didn't study them in school. But right now, billionaires are going to war over them. Governments are panicking because of them. And one country just cut off the entire Western world's access to them. Your phone has them in it. Your car has them. The wind turbines making clean energy have them. Military weapon systems cannot function without them. And China controls over 70% of the world's supply. These are rare earth minerals, and the fight over who controls them is one of the most important battles happening on the planet right now. You just can't see it. Let's start from the beginning. Rare earth elements have names like neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, lanthanum. 17 elements total. They sound like things a scientist made up, but they do things nothing else can do. The magnets in electric car motors need neodymium and dysprosium. The screen you're looking at right now uses terbium and europium. Your camera lens has lanthanum in it. LED lights, lasers, satellites, fighter jets, guided missiles, all of it depends on these materials. The reason they're called rare earths isn't because they're actually rare in the ground. They're found all over the planet. The problem is that pulling them out of the ground and processing them into something usable is extraordinarily difficult, expensive, and toxic. And that processing is where China has everyone cornered. Here's how China got here. Back in the 1980s, the United States was actually the world's biggest producer of rare earths. There was a mine in California called Mountain Pass that supplied most of the world. America was winning. Then China made a decision. Deng Xiaoping, China's leader at the time, said something that seems almost prophetic now. He said, "The Middle East has oil. China has rare earths." He understood what these materials would mean for the future, so China started mining aggressively and selling the materials at prices so low that no other country could compete. This is called dumping. You sell below cost on purpose to drive everyone else out of business. And it worked perfectly. Mountain Pass shut down. Western mining companies couldn't survive the competition. Everyone who needed rare earths just started buying from China. By the time the 2000s rolled around, China had a near-total monopoly. And once you have a monopoly, you have power. In 2010, China got into a territorial dispute with Japan over some islands. Their response was not military. They just cut off exports. Japanese manufacturers who depended on these materials suddenly had nothing. It was a message to the rest of the world. We can do this to anyone. Then in 2023, China restricted exports of gallium and germanium, two other critical materials. Again, not tanks, not missiles. Just a quiet policy announcement that sent shockwaves through every government and technology company on the planet. This is where the billionaires come in. When one country controls a resource that everyone else needs, that's a crisis. But for investors, a crisis is also an opportunity. If you can build a supply of rare earths outside of China, you become extremely valuable. Governments will fund you. Defense departments will sign long-term contracts with you. You're not just running a mining business. You're providing national security, and that's a position where money flows very easily. The most visible player is Elon Musk, though not because he went looking for this fight. Tesla's electric car motors need neodymium and dysprosium for their permanent magnets. These are the strongest permanent magnets that exist. There is no equally good substitute. If China stopped selling these materials to Tesla tomorrow, production would halt. Musk has been pushing hard to sign deals with Australian mining companies to secure alternative supply. He's also funding research into motor designs that need fewer rare earths. But here's the honest truth. So far, nothing matches the performance. Switching to something else means a weaker motor, or a bigger and heavier one. The car loses something. So even with all of Musk's resources, he hasn't solved this problem. He's just managing it. The most important company most people have never heard of is an Australian business called Lynas Rare Earths. They operate one of the only significant rare earth mines outside of China, in Western Australia. For years they struggled financially, but now they're one of the most strategically valuable companies on Earth. Both the Australian and American governments have pumped money into them. The U.S. Department of Defense is funding a Lynas processing facility in Texas. The goal is a supply chain that never touches China. Meanwhile in California, The Mountain Pass mine that shut down years ago was reopened by a company called MP Materials. But there's a twist. When they first restarted, the ore was being mined in California and then shipped to China for processing. They're building facilities now, but it takes time. Even America's domestic mine was still dependent on China for a critical step. That's how deep this problem goes. Over in Africa, there's a full-on scramble. Countries like Burundi, Malawi, and Madagascar have significant rare earth deposits. Chinese companies have been investing in these projects for years, building the roads and power plants and infrastructure needed to reach them. They're willing to go into politically unstable places and take risks that Western companies won't. In exchange, they get long-term contracts for the materials. Western billionaires and mining companies are trying to compete, but they're at a real disadvantage. A publicly traded Western company has shareholders who want returns. They have to follow environmental rules. They're vulnerable to pressure from activist groups. Chinese state-owned enterprises don't face any of these pressures. They're backed by a government that treats rare earth dominance as a national strategic priority, worth subsidizing indefinitely. It's not a fair fight. One investor who has been vocal about all of this is Robert Friedland, a legendary mining billionaire who made his earlier fortunes in diamonds and copper. He's been clear that this competition isn't just about profit, it's about geopolitical power. But he's also honest about China's processing capabilities. Catching up will cost billions of dollars and take years, maybe decades. Now let's talk about the dirty secret of this whole industry. Mining and processing rare earths is genuinely filthy work. The ore often contains radioactive elements. Processing it requires huge amounts of toxic chemicals. In Baotou, Inner Mongolia, which is the center of China's rare earth industry, there is a massive artificial lake filled entirely with toxic waste. The surrounding air and water are heavily contaminated. Workers and people living nearby have much higher rates of cancer than the general population. This is the cost China paid to dominate this industry. They accepted the environmental damage as part of the strategy. This is why Mountain Pass shut down. Environmental violations and community opposition. In Western countries, you cannot just poison a river. Getting permits takes years. So while Western countries are trying to catch up, they're doing it with both hands partly tied behind their backs. Some think they've found a way around this. Ideas include extracting rare earths from coal ash, deep-sea mining with robots, or even mining asteroids in space. Billionaires including Larry Page put money into it. Eric Schmidt also invested. Both ventures eventually failed or changed direction. Turns out space mining is extraordinarily hard, but people are still working on it. Now here's the important thing to understand about China's strategy. They almost certainly don't want to actually cut off all rare earth exports to the West. If they did that, Western governments would be forced to build alternative supply chains immediately at any cost. Right now, the West is dependent and moving slowly. A complete embargo would light a fire under everyone and accelerate exactly the outcome China is trying to prevent. So China's approach is more calculated. Use the threat of cutoff to gain leverage. Impose selective restrictions to make a point. Control enough of the market that no competitor can grow large enough to threaten the dominance. Keep the West just dependent enough that they don't want to spend the money to break free. And it's working. Japan figured this out after 2010 and responded the smartest way possible. They invested heavily in designing motors using fewer rare earths. They built up stockpiles as a buffer. They invested in recycling programs to recover rare earths from old electronics. They took the threat seriously and acted systematically. Other Western countries are only now starting to catch up. The stakes here are not abstract. Modern military equipment, fighter jets, guided missiles, satellites, all depend on rare earths. The United States military is one of the largest consumers of these materials on Earth. And until very recently, that supply chain ran almost entirely through China. If the US and China ever came into a serious conflict, China could cripple American weapons manufacturing without firing a single shot. The Pentagon knows this. They're funding domestic projects and signing contracts with companies specifically to fix this vulnerability. But building the infrastructure to mine, process, and manufacture finished products from rare earths takes years. And it requires political will and funding that doesn't always survive changes in government. The invisible war over rare earths is one of the defining competitions of this era. It's happening in mines in Australia and Africa, in government offices in Washington and Beijing, in laboratories trying to invent materials that don't need these elements at all, and in boardrooms where billionaires are betting billions on which direction the future goes. Whoever controls rare earths controls electric vehicles, renewable energy, advanced weapons, and consumer technology. That's most of the economy of the next 50 years. And right now, China controls them. That is a problem everyone is racing to solve, and nobody has solved yet.